So what we do on Let Us Explain is dive deep on something we can't stop thinking about for other people who can't stop thinking about that thing too. That means we'll be talking about anything and everything. Sometimes that includes spoilers, but before we jump into the spoiler zone, let's talk more generally about Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. I am your co-host, Zachary Shevich, and joining me, he has a bad feeling about this. It's Arturo Zurita!
I was telling Fernando before we had started, I was like, why is it that everyone was just listening to the Black Eyed Peas? Because everyone had a feeling, no matter who it was, every single person, why you want to do this? I have a feeling. That's how they wrote the script. I have a feeling it should go this way, or they read a Reddit thread, and it decided to go that way. But I'm excited to be here. I feel like Zach and I, as not being the biggest Star Wars fans, we don't have that much stakes invested into this long franchise. We're coming at it from a perspective where we're not as attached to it. But our boy Fernando is ready to fight to the death for this movie right here.
Mm-hmm. Right, we brought our cute little droid along with us. It's Fernando the intern. Say what up, Fernando.
What's up, guys? I'm here. Just got back from the movie. Yeah, I'm ready to talk about Star Wars.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I bought these beforehand with the risk that I could hate this movie, right?
Is it the broken helmet?
Just monuments to its failure in your bedroom.
But no, luckily that wasn't the case for me. And we'll get into it in a bit. But yeah, glad to be here.
All right, so The Rise of Skywalker, it's the ninth and final question mark installment of the Skywalker saga. Director J.J. Abrams, director of Force Awakens, returns to a galaxy far, far away after Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi. Emperor Palpatine is back, and the Resistance is facing off against the First Order in a final climactic battle to save the galaxy. Art, where does The Rise of Skywalker rank among Star Wars movies to you?
Ooh, sheesh. A little bit to the lower half of the middle, I would personally say. Fernando?
Not the worst, but definitely not.
No, it's not the worst. It's almost like it's a Star Wars movie in an alternate reality. You don't really blame fan fictions when they're made at such a big budget scale, almost in a sense, right, Fernando?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, it is. Where did I put it? I think at number 2. I think I'm rotating it between 5 and 6 on my list.
Oh.
Yeah. So firmly in the middle. I would not consider it
one of the best
of
the Star Wars.
Yes.
It's not the best Star Wars film you've ever seen in your life?
No, it's not.
Okay.
But I do think
for either of you, I'm curious though, for either of you, if it's not the lowest ranking of this new trilogy, because for me it's the lowest ranking of the 3 recent.
Get ready for this. So I agree with you. Listen to this, man.
Yeah, it's not for me. It's the middle one for me. I go Last Jedi, Rise, and then Force Awakens.
I don't even understand that, Zach. That doesn't even make any sense, It's like his ex and his new girlfriend are hanging out together and everything's okay. It's I don't know. We'll get to that when we get to spoilers, but it's so confusing to me to hear something like that.
All right, so I guess
there's no other way to put it, right?
What else do you want to say about it? Like, what were your main thoughts? I know you were ultimately not. You didn't think it was awful.
I don't think it is. It's just one of those things where a lot of people going into The Last Jedi were expecting a bunch of the answers set up in The Force Awakens to be answered, and not just one, not just two, but like all 12 questions were like, nope, we are not going to answer them. And the answers we are going to give you are going to be just complete nothing answers. Literally nothing. That was the answer to some of the questions. Nobody. Nothing. I
remember when we had this talk after The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
One of your frustrations again was like the lack of cohesion that it seemed like there was between Force Awakens and Last Jedi, and it seems like again it's that lack of authorial singularity amongst the franchise that maybe is taking you out of it.
Because as everyone knows, it goes JJ did 7, and then Rian Johnson did 8, and then JJ did 8 again and 9. So that's what he did with the last one. He pretty much redid the trilogy. He has The Force Awakens, and then The Rise of Skywalker honestly feels like, and even when you look at the credits, it goes story by, I can't remember the first guy, and Colin Trevorrow. and
Right.
JJ and Chris Terrio. Like, what?
Once upon a time, Jurassic World director Colin Trevorrow was also going to be the director of this 9th episode.
Exactly, and he never was able to get it, but somehow some of his stories stayed. So it's very interesting to see that Blank and Blank and Blink and Blink. So one story and another story combined. I think you kind of feel it in the last movie. And again, putting yourself away from the story, because it's kind of, I do want to have that discussion of what it's going to feel like 30 years from now, watching these movies. Without all of the baggage that comes with it, because obviously the biggest baggage that comes with it is that concept of, did they ever really have everything set? Was there ever a plan for the entire trilogy? Did it go to Rian Johnson? They told him, do what you got to do, and he went, all right, Last Jedi. I was keep talking about the documentary that he did for The Last Jedi, the directing the Jedi. One of my favorite scenes is when they're interviewing Hamill, and Hamill legitimately just goes, I hate everything he's done, but I respect it. If I'm great in the movie, it's because of him. And if I'm bad in the movie, also because of him. But he took it with it, and they allowed him to make the movie that he wanted to make, and he was very adamant that you can't remake another Empire by just doing the same thing again. I am your grandfather. Like, what the... No. He thought the best concept was to go at it from an angle, and I was telling this to Fernando earlier, that idea of the fan base is now divided to the point, 30 years and change, right? Almost 40, I think. Like
40, over 40, yeah.
Right? 40 years. Some people loved the theming of The Last Jedi, that it can be anyone. That's the whole point. It ends on that shot. My man made another movie called Knives Out. Ended the movie the same way, too. That theming, and then for the people who want the lore, seem to be at heads of someone,
right.
And it kind of feels like The Last Jedi kind of just redoes all of that, because you can't undo that. It not being someone's parents, sure, your parents are nobody's. Yeah. Theories can
we'll
be
get
out
a little
there,
bit more into the idea of some contradictions when we dive further into spoilers. But before we do, Fernando, I wanted to ask you about that idea of giving yourself 30 years of distance. I think there is this general feeling around the movie right now that it's a direct response to how fans felt, and a lot of people are struggling to kind of look at it as its own film. But I'm wondering to you, what are the things about The Rise of Skywalker that stand out to you that you think kind of make it different from the other installments, or will be memorable about this film in the future that made it better than The Force Awakens even for you?
Yeah, so two interesting parallels I find between my experience watching Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker were, for both films, I stayed off Twitter, right? I took Twitter off my phone. I muted words. I did not want to see any reactions to it beforehand. When I went into Last Jedi, I came out, crying, loved it. Go on Twitter, see one side completely hating it, right? Completely hating it. Okay, had my 2 years with that movie, came to Rise of Skywalker, did the same exact thing, stayed off Twitter, didn't see any reactions to the premiere. Go watch it, sit down, feel all the emotions, come out of the theater, ask my buddy, he's like, you want another Rotten Tomato score? I was like, hit me. He goes 59, I think it was.
What
at
did
the time.
you think it would be?
And I had no idea. I honestly had no idea what it would be. The only reaction I had to it was talking to you, Art, when you're like, you love Last Jedi? And I was like, yeah. And then you started laughing. And I was like, okay, I don't know if that's the best thing. And you just said, good luck.
Well, I just meant it as I see these movies as being so contradictory to each other. But continue. Okay. Your experience.
Yeah. Then after I saw it and started reading, I understood why you had that reaction. And I was just like, wow, because now this entire other group of people hate this movie.
It's swapped.
Yeah. Literally on the Rotten Tomatoes page, the critics and audience score swapped. So I think it's this weird thing because I don't know if I'm the weird one where it's possible that there's people out there that love both, because I do, and I know a couple people that do as well.
And you don't feel like it's a contradiction to love both?
No, I don't. And there's so many moments in Rise of Skywalker that are spoilery, so we'll get into them in a bit, that I do love. I think one big thing for me is that I now see this as one full story, right? One story with
Our spoiler discussion is going to be crazy. All right.
Yeah.
One full story that started with George Lucas, and
With
his vision.
George?
What?
You're going all the way back to George.
Yeah, that started with George Lucas when he made A New Hope, not knowing that he was make sequels to this movie, right? That was, as people say, the most expensive indie film ever made for that time.
Agreed.
And it turned into this huge thing
Franchise.
that he would have never expected. And somehow, because I do acknowledge and know that they did not have a plan, like they didn't write it out like the Marvel Universe like Kevin Feige did, but somehow, even after all that, to me, they were able to make a trilogy that connects and also makes sense with the other movies that came before it. So maybe, if it doesn't for you guys, maybe I'll give you what I take, and maybe they'll see if it makes sense.
I got to say this. Before we started even recording, Fernando goes, I just want one little section that I would like to add to the recording. A Q&A one. So if y'all have any questions, I'm looking at this man like, you got the answer, Sway? He's like, if you're confused in any way, shape, or form, I will tell you where the Star Wars lore goes in. But he's deep into it. He was telling me what happens to Jar Jar, which maybe we'll get into later. That's interesting to hear. Very interesting.
Yeah, my curiosity for Star Wars tends to not really run that deep. I'm more of like a surface level. Did this space adventure keep me occupied and entertained? And I gotta say that like for a lot of this movie, I did not feel like with the story. I felt like a bit lost as to the importance of a lot of the actions and the ultimate like necessity of the various. I think everybody's been referring to them as basically fetch tasks that come throughout the film. Sheesh. The pacing was really what threw me off, where even in the moments when I might have liked a certain story turn, the way that it was quickly cut to and they refused to linger on any moment, it felt like, at least for the first half of it, particularly, that ultimately left me emotionally disconnected from the movie. But I feel like we're eager to start talking specifics about this movie. So I think you can get a general idea of how we all feel about it if you are trying to avoid spoilers. But we're going to open this thing up to Rise of Skywalker spoilers. If you can't handle the truth or you haven't seen the movie, now is your chance to get out and watch a spoiler-free edition of the Intercut podcast, including our recently published Best TV of 2019. Maybe see if The Mandalorian made any of our lists. I think you'll guess which one of us included it. Art. There are a lot of ways in which people feel that this movie is reversing the choices made in The Last Jedi. Do you feel like J.J. Abrams did a good job of returning the trilogy at least to his vision from The Force Awakens?
I mean, did he do a great job doing it? I don't know. Did he?
I mean, if you didn't buy
he did
the turn,
how do I put this?
Certainly tried.
Do you remember?
He wanted to.
Perfect example. Poe landed the Millennium Falcon. Did he land it smoothly? I don't know about that, but he landed it. They got off the ship. It's very interesting because to me, looking at it from the two perspectives of you're looking at the movie itself and then you're looking at the whole production side to it. I find the whole production side to it, the way that fans respond to it. I've always, I've always felt that's a part of the discussion. The making of the movie is a big part of the discussion to me. I know some people don't want to know anything about that. They want to know how the movie stands on its own. I don't think so. Especially with a movie like this where all of Leia's scenes are altered because of her death. It's like you have to take that into account.
Can we take a moment and talk about that specifically? Because that's something that I felt really did not work for me. Like I don't want to criticize it too heavily because I understand
it's a weird thing to criticize.
The ultimate reasoning for why it didn't work, but I felt a lot of those scenes. You could feel the ways in which they were writing around her limited availability. I guess that's the word I'll go with.
Alina even said you could tell it in the blocking. And she's like, it became very obvious with the blocking. It's like the shots didn't even make any sense from the angles that they were getting it, but it was because they had like the double there. And then just to turn, since we're into spoilers, the fact that she passes and that automatically makes Poe the next general. And I'm going to put it this way. I've loved Poe, and I never really cared for Finn. There's one consistency throughout all these Star Wars movies. They are clearly in a relationship, but Star Wars does not have the balls to say that they are. They want to get credit for that.
Oscar Isaac plays it that way, right?
Yeah.
Oscar Isaac plays it that way? Bro, do you remember when they meet up in The Force Awakens? This man goes, you're wearing my jacket. You look good in it. I mean, he bites it. He licks his lips. And then fit in this one, who I really liked. Go ahead, Fernando.
No, I was just going to say, I think this is something we might bring up a little bit later regarding another scene that's in the movie.
No, do it right now because this is exactly what I want to connect to. I think that's a cop-out scene because it's able to just be snipped out. That's how minuscule it is. That for overseas, you can just cut it out.
Yeah. No, I do get what you're saying. It's surprising to hear Zach say that the Leia stuff didn't work for him, because that was one thing obviously that my brain couldn't let go of when my first watching of this, like knowing Carrie Fisher unfortunately passed before they were able to film this, and the lead up to the press and stuff, the question was, are they going to recast, are they going to do the digital CGI thing because they have the technology for it, or what are they going to do? And JJ said no, we're going to use unused footage. And I was like, okay, how much is there left?
Yeah, that's crazy.
How are they gonna implement it? Did he know where he wanted the story to go in the first place? And it seemed like he kind of did with the stuff that we have, but it worked for me, especially on my second time viewing. Nothing really felt out of shape. I was looking out for the blocking and stuff too, and then that's probably just a back body double. But all the stuff really worked for me, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you get the sense that JJ or maybe someone else within the Star Wars creative community had envisioned these three movies as send-offs of sort for Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, and Carrie Fisher. And, it is obviously an unfortunate thing that they didn't have Carrie Fisher around to kind of give her the proper sending off. All things considered, I thought she was integrated okay, and maybe it is just that I have that knowledge that she died well before this movie was done.
So again,
or even
in 30
started
years,
filming, I believe. That I'm looking for those seams and those gaps, but I'm sure that there are going to be some other people out there who kind of see that. Interesting to see that it did work for you, but sort of to return to the idea of how well J.J. Abrams was able to wrangle some of these things back. I mean, I am less deeply knowledgeable about the fan arguments about some of these things, but you look at the way in which Kylo Ren's helmet was reassembled after Rian Johnson broke it. You look at what was some of the art? I'm sure you have some of these more at the ready than I do.
So the Kylo Ren getting his helmet fixed up again. Okay. I think that's a slap in the face to Rian Johnson, and I think that's very disrespectful. The helmet looks dope, fixed up again. It's like, when you think of Chucky, what's the first? Think of Chucky, the doll. What's the iconic one you think of? Him all scissored up, dude. I thought it looked crazy. I thought
that's an interesting thing where it's like, if you know some of the behind the scenes stuff, that's like a weird controversial thing. If you don't know it, it's like, ooh, cool new helmet. I thought it was cool too.
It's a cool helmet, but at the same time, it's like I can see it from both perspectives. Like, that's very disrespectful for him trying to get rid of it away. But then you bring it back and it's really cool. Is that just to have another Funko Pop? Is always what I think with these major stuff. Some of the other ones would have.
No, if they're catering to Funko Pop, they're doing it with Babu Frick.
Babu Frick. Yeah.
Oh.
Dio.
Oh, I didn't want to talk about the best part of the movie right away. We got to save him for a bit. We got to save Babu Frick. It made me all of the criticism that I had. I was so cynical for a lot of the parts in this movie, but I could not help but smile every time that thing talked. He hasn't been in a movie before, right? He's completely new?
No, he's new, yeah.
Dude, that person killed it. I don't know what the pronoun is for a Babu Frick, but it was hilarious.
Maybe this is a good spot to pause and actually compliment a lot of the production design and character design behind this movie.
Fernando and I just fight. We like the helmet.
One thing I think is that definitely the new trilogy has done a lot of things to kind of continue the visual vision of the Star Wars world in a way that feels totally in line with what came before it. You talk about Dio, Babu Frick. I thought that Fernando, you're going to have to help me, but the party festival thing that they stopped by.
I think it was called the Festival of. I actually forgot. Oh yeah, the festival on Pasana, though, on the planet.
Right. I think they keep trying to get things that give you a bit of the cantina vibes, and this is the first time where I was like, oh, I'd like to hang out there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You didn't feel that way for the Last Jedi's casino thing, right? One of the most, I think that even fans of the Last Jedi still go back and was like, I will defend this movie, but I don't know what they were doing in the casino scene. I agree with you. I think that part was also pretty cool. I would even raise you the actual war in the stars at the end when they have their on your left scene. Everybody's like, which I love that scene. Poe. I love how Poe was just standing around too. Like he wasn't even, he wasn't doing anything. He was just like, guys, I might have to call it in. It's done. The trilogy's over. And then all you hear is like, on your left, it's the Avengers Endgame. Like everyone just appears. I thought that was a really cool. It's so much happening on screen, but that scene of like everyone coming in to help, the friends we made along the way, of everybody being there.
I heard one thing that I thought of, and then I heard someone else say it on another podcast. It was the Galactic Dunkirk. Just all these regular people coming in to help.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty cool.
Interesting analogy, actually.
I love that visual. I don't know some of the other stuff that stood out to you guys. I liked Finn more in this one. I liked C-3PO for the first time ever. I don't like C-3PO at all.
Noted C-3PO critic Arturo.
I have a whole thesis statement about it. No, legitimately, I have timestamps from each movie every single time he annoys me. But in this one, he was actually kind of cool. He's got one of the best lines. He's sacrificing himself, and he does the whole, like, I'm just taking one last look at my friends in case I don't remember any of this. But to go along with what Zach said, that goes away. It's like, wow, what a sacred. Now, 10 minutes later, he's got his memory back. Oh my gosh, Chewbacca died. What a performance from Daisy Ridley to it doesn't matter the next scene. I don't even know where Fernando, where did the ship leave? Finn was looking at the ship the entire time, Fernando. Right. When did the ship leave?
When I was talking about the pacing earlier, one of my big issues with the pacing was the way that whole Chewie sequence was handled, because he just shows up. There's no kind of like reveal to it. Simple like basic filmmaking things where
and it was just
you kind of have to show that the moment is a big moment through your camera. And I'm surprised that J.J. Abrams didn't do that. I wonder if some of those things were like reducing for time or whatever it was. I've heard there was a lot of writing on the fly going on during this movie. But you were talking about the blocking just of that moment. And I think the blocking in that moment is really what gets things wrong. It's, Chewie is walking down, and then all of a sudden he's with a bunch of people, stormtroopers
in a ship that was invisible, but Finn's over here,
and there was a second ship there for some reason,
which doesn't make sense because Finn was literally looking at the ship that he got on.
There were two ships though. When I saw it the second time, there are two ships. One's in the background. But I do understand what you guys are saying. It's like, where did...
Maybe they could have like made it a little bit more clear. Like, obviously somebody had that same criticism or thought too. So, it's there. But if both of us thought this...
Or it's the thing is like, if he didn't want to make it clear to make us feel like, oh, snap, this should really just kill
but I'm talking about what Zach is saying, though. They just cut to an insert of him being okay. Like, we didn't even cut away to the ship for a sequence. It was just to be like, by the way, he's good. All right, now back to our story.
Yeah, and they didn't even like let it breathe.
Let it breathe a bit. Yeah, that clip would have been
feel
fine just
bad.
later.
You cut to them grieving Chewie, and it doesn't mean anything because you already know that Chewie's okay.
Do you get what I mean?
And the thing is, like, I actually thought it was an interesting decision to kill Chewie. I was like, wow, they went there.
Put it to you this way. Star Wars has done this thing where I think they killed a character called the Emperor, and they didn't let us know until 30-something-ish years later that he's still alive. So I felt the Chewbacca moment just could have been a little bit, it could have been better. I really thought Ridley's performance when... I thought that was really cool too. Yeah. Like the Emperor stuff comes out of her, because it's like I always associate the whole electricity coming out of the fingertips to the Emperor. So when you see that, it's like, whoa. Oh, that was one of the
surprises of the movie that worked really well, even if they undid some of it.
Question, Fernando, maybe you can answer this. What is Kylo's objective for the first half of the movie?
Kylo?
Yeah. He wants to...
So Kylo, I mean, they touch on it in the crawl, and okay, so kind of first left talking about the Emperor stuff when from the teaser from Star Wars Celebration when we know the Emperor's gonna be in this. To what extent we don't know. To the fact that when I sat in the theater and the crawl came up and they just say that the Emperor is back already, I was like, okay, they did this. They're just going straight for it. which I know confused a lot of people, and a lot of people are
They
kind
put
of
him
like,
in the poster.
well, how does that kind of make sense? So Kylo in the beginning, and this is my biggest criticism of the movie is up until they leave the desert planet, I do feel like it's very clunky. I do feel like things happen really fast.
2 movies
and
in
even
one?
and even for the Star Wars fan in me, there's like little things in there that I would have been like, man, that would have been so cool to explore, because according to the visual dictionary of Star Wars, which is something I'm going to bring up several times in this episode, the first planet that we see Kylo on, and I think I might be mistaken, but I think this was the first movie that starts with like the perspective of the villain, or of like and of like the antagonist.
Because he's killing everybody, right? That's the intro.
Yeah. So on that planet, he's on Mustafar, which is in Revenge of the Sith and Rogue One. The lava planet, where Anakin and Obi-Wan fight. That's the planet they're on. And he's looking for the Wayfinder, the Sith Wayfinder, the little triangle thing, because there's 2 made. One of them was in Darth Vader's castle, I believe, and the film does several things that I can understand how if you just watch the movies, it won't really make sense, right? You're like watching Kylo kill all these people. And you're
I
like,
will agree with him. Yes, Star Wars does a really great job of adding a lot of lore to their books and graphic. I'm reading the Darth Vader graphic novel right now from the Marvel stuff. It is fantastic. Mm-hmm. It's really great. Just perfect character development. Like, it feels like Darth Vader, but it's also a really cool book. And they add so much stuff from the outside perspective. Mm-hmm. And as a person who's always really big for that, from the Cloverfield movies and everything else, I feel like such a hypocrite going, yeah, but y'all gotta add a little bit to the movies, though.
Yeah. No, that's a completely fair statement, to where it's like, and not everyone wants to like have to read this book or this comic to understand everything.
Yeah,
right?
But I can't blame it, because it has always been there. People have always hinted about the Emperor being alive. I love how the question went from, how is the Emperor alive, to how does the Emperor have sex? Like, that's the new question from the beginning, from when you enter, from when you exit.
Fernando, can you break down a little bit more some of those things that people have been saying JJ is changing from The Last Jedi to The Rise of Skywalker, and maybe whether or not you agree that they're like intentionally disrespectful or actually work within the larger
or like how you said,
context.
was always a part of the plan that fixes the trilogy.
Okay, so I'll start with like the easy ones, I think, and then go into the more complicated ones. So the first easy one that I have no idea why anyone would think it's a slap in the face to The Last Jedi is the scene after Rey fights Kylo. She goes back to Octo. She's burning the TIE fighter, and she goes to throw the lightsaber. Force goes, Luke catches it, and he says, that's no way to treat a Jedi's weapon, right? And people automatically were like, ha ha ha, Rian Johnson, that's what you get for like making Luke throw the lightsaber over his shoulder in Last Jedi. And that's not at all how I took it. To me, and I don't know if like people who hate The Last Jedi just never finished the movie, but Luke redeemed, like he comes full circle in The Last Jedi. Even J.J. Abrams in an interview, he says the beautiful thing that Rian did was give Luke an arc, where in the beginning he acknowledges by the end that he is wrong for abandoning the First Order and staying hidden for so long.
Right.
So
you're saying that the character of Luke was in a different place when he threw away the lightsaber.
Exactly. And when he ends it, he finally realizes, thanks to Rey and thanks to the little spark that the Resistance had on Krayt, that there is possibility for redemption, and Luke finds that, and he ends up becoming one with the Force. So when we see him in Rise of Skywalker and he does that, he's already understood his wrong, and now he's in the position where he needs to teach Rey why she can't do the same exact thing that he did. So I think that line works like beautifully with what happens in The Last Jedi. I don't understand at all how people see that and say like, yeah, take that, Rian Johnson. Like, I don't get that.
Have you ever listened to Ether by Nas?
Ether. No.
Okay. If you listen to that song and think that that's not this and Jay-Z in any way, shape, or form, I don't know what you listen to.
Okay, so that's the first one.
I think it does. I think it kind of
Really?
does. I think a little bit. I think choosing that line specifically, knowing that that's the first thing Luke did, I think it's very cheeky and I think it works. But I think, again, the reason I bring up Ether is because the best disses are subliminal. The best disses can come off as compliments. I feel like, I don't know. I like it. Again, I like how it works. But there's no way that's not a little bit of a jab. It's a little bit of a jab.
I think it still works though, because throughout Star Wars, there's always this thing, especially in the prequels when there's like a lot more Jedi. There's always this big thing with like, you know, people losing their lightsaber and Padawans like learning to take better care of their lightsabers.
But do you think JJ liked the scene in Last Jedi where he just tosses it? Like, I ended my movie on the literal cliffhanger and then he just tossed it. Do you think he liked that? No.
I don't know.
Put it to you this way, the ending. Ryan's very adamant. It should be nobody. Gave a whole thesis about how that's the better way to go.
So I think that's probably the biggest diversion.
That
and maybe
definitely
that's
is a
worth diving
slap.
into too. Is the whole idea of Rey's parentage and whether or not Rey is the child of no one, or if it's important that she has this famous bloodline, that she's the granddaughter of Emperor Palpatine, as they
what do
show
you
in this
think?
movie. And also, I think it's worth bringing up the whole ending too, because I, for one, thought it would have been more powerful if she stuck with Rey, just Rey, instead
there you
of
go.
going with Rey Skywalker. But I don't know if that's something that you disagreed with, Fernando, or what you thought about the other, the whole change in the bloodline.
Yeah, I guess that's another split that I've been seeing a lot, is whether you think it's more powerful for her to be Rey just Rey or Rey Skywalker. And for me, it's tough. I respect people's opinions if they think Rey just Rey is more powerful. But when she said Rey Skywalker, I like lost it. I was like, damn, that is...
It's like her adoptive parents.
I love it. So here's how I perceive it. It's tough because some of it might not. It's weird because there's certain things in the story that I really can't explain fully or well. And I completely understand people. Like, I completely understand people that really are upset and want her just to be absolutely nobody. But I think my biggest takeaway from it is that her parents were nobody because they chose to be nobody. They say that in the movie. Kylo tells her that. And I think for me, a big part of Rey's story is her wanting to know who her parents were. She knows deep down that they're nobody. But there's still a part of her that's like, you know, why did they like leave me on this planet?
Yeah.
You know, why did they, according to Kylo Ren, sold her for drinking money, right? And just left her, right? Because they didn't love her, they didn't want her, they weren't ready for her, whatever. But by the end of it, of Rise of Skywalker, she learns that her parents did that to protect her, right? Because they knew that the Emperor would want her and would want to turn her into whatever he wanted, because that's how powerful he was. So Rey's asked twice in the Rise of Skywalker who she is, right? In the beginning in the festival, you know, a local asks her, oh, like, what's your name? And she says Rey. And then C-3PO's like,
Rey.
she wants to know Rey what, you know? And she says Rey, just Rey. But by the end of it, when the lady on Tatooine asks her again, she says Rey Skywalker. So never in the movie does she accept she's a Palpatine. That's what she's most afraid of, right? She has the visions. She's like, and that's why she was going to just stay on Octo and just like, you know, not interfere at all, because she was scared of herself that she would become something that she didn't want to become. She saw herself on the Sith throne. She saw herself not being strong enough to not deny what's in her bloodline, what she's like meant to be, what she's meant to become. But by
choosing the name Skywalker, she is sort of choosing the type of person she wants to be. She's kind of entering herself into a legacy and entering an adoptive family of sorts. So I see the argument there.
Yeah. And I think
I don't know. It's definitely fair to argue it both ways.
Yeah, and I guess just for me also, again, because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I'm not so. I think in The Last Jedi Ryan handled Luke so beautifully. but the name Skywalker is just like a big deal.
It's so much. It's
me.
Too much of a big deal almost.
Yeah. So
not everybody gets those type of mentors, especially. Let's see if I'm mistaken. Mentors who knew you were the granddaughter of a damn Sith Lord the entire time, but you know the Last Jedi. Doesn't Luke go, "Who are you?" Isn't there multiple scenes in The Last Jedi where it's definitively that her parents really weren't anybody? Like, legit, like, there are lines where they go, no, like, you legitimately aren't anybody. And your parents aren't related to anybody.
I think, to me, when that scene happened, I thought it was really powerful because to know... Okay, and here's the other thing. Now, in the context of all the movies, we can technically, like, look back. Well, not technically. We can't look back and be like, all right, Obi-Wan knew who Luke's dad was, and he didn't tell him.
Just as
right.
weird.
There's always going to be little logic flaws and stuff like that, inevitably over the course of multiple trilogies.
Some are like
that
switches
get handed between directors and writers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like even something like the Marvel films, which have Kevin Feige presiding over them. Like if you want to scrutinize them, you can find
for sure
logic flaws and consistency issues.
But I don't think it's like a logic flaw per se, because Obi-Wan does say later in Return of the Jedi, he did tell him, but just from a certain point of view, which I think is a really big thing. Some people might call it a cop out, but it's like a motif.
I think Luke and Leia not saying anything is a really big cop out.
I think I take it as like, but I still take it, and the way Rey takes it though is like, wow, like both of them knew who I was or who I was tied to and what I could become.
They still
but
believed
they still
in me.
chose
Again,
to train me.
that's the thing with Rise, is that it chooses another option, and like you said, it's a matter of opinion. I don't think that option is wrong, and I felt the same way with The Last Jedi. I don't agree with a lot of things that he did in The Last Jedi, because I felt it was a lot of you think it's going this way? Nope, it's going that way. Just sometimes for the sake of going that way, I felt. But that wasn't a bet. I just may not have been a fan of it, but it makes sense within the context of Star Wars.
Yeah, and
Art.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah. I want to ask though, because you are pointing out a lot of these sort of like gaps in thinking, or maybe places where the films don't line up, and are those the things that ultimately made this a less enjoyable experience than most of the other Star Wars films?
It's just
or was it the film itself? Like, is it the way that it was executed?
Well, yeah, the execution for sure, because you and I 100% agree that the rushing it, like just as a movie itself, it definitely feels like they're trying to pack too much in there, and they don't let it breathe. We were just talking about how there is a character arc for Luke. Luke just comes in and when did Force Ghosts are now able to interact with stuff? I know that sometimes it's been the case, but that's been a really big argument now too. He's laughing about it, but also just the ideologies clashing is just a little annoying, just because, again, this is one of the biggest franchises of all time, and y'all didn't have a plan. It's so intriguing, though. I also find it fascinating. I'm not, like, disappointed. It's just crazy to me that, y'all winged it. Y'all freestyled a trilogy.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing, is that sometimes, kind of like when we were talking about 1917, the cohesion of it all, sometimes it doesn't end up landing the same way, because I feel like I have two endings, as we were saying. It's almost a choose your own adventure. You want it to end on The Last Jedi, or do you like the lore side of Rise of the Skywalker? And I felt like they were trying to give you the entire cake and force it down your throat to eat it as well. I don't know.
Fernando, you mentioned that you had you also felt that some things, particularly in the beginning, were rushed. What did you think of some of the filmmaking elements, aside from some of the plot elements?
Yeah, no, I definitely think, and this is why I still think Last Jedi is far and away the best of the new trilogy, is because the filmmaking in this one is definitely not on par with The Last Jedi. So my critical brain, my critic brain, or whatever you want to call it, can see the criticisms and the flaws that this movie has, and the pacing, the script and stuff, but the larger part of me can push those things aside for this movie. And I made this really long Twitter thread where I was like, is that kind of fair to every other movie I judge? Not really, but at the same time, these
That's
movies
the whole point of a fan base. Yeah,
have done a lot for me.
Dude,
to the point
this man
where
has pictures.
I can acknowledge that these aren't the best movies ever made. There's movies that I know are way better, but emotionally, they've done more for me than other movies have.
You were satisfied, and that's just something that matters a lot to you. And despite all the weight that you put into it, it was able to satisfy that interest or curiosity or however.
That's what I think builds one of the best scenes in the movie. It's the scene between Ben and his dad. Ben, because at that point he has become he's coming back to becoming Ben, and when he looks at his father, and they're reenacting the same scene. Where he's like, "It's too difficult. I need to do something, but I think it's too difficult." And he touches him the same way that he did in Force Awakens, but this time he's like, "Dad," and before he can say "I love you," and this is all this is something that goes way back to the originals. Instead of him saying "I love you," his dad just goes, "I know," which is. So to me, when you have a franchise that's big, that's one of the most beneficial things you can get is living with a character so you can have a moment like that. Like I said, some of the callbacks that they have don't always work for me, but this one I thought was that's the only scene that gave me goosebumps. I was like, this was planned since Seven.
Am I a monster for not really liking that scene?
You're sick.
Really?
You're gross.
Wow.
How
I'm just generally not a fan of let's bring back a dead character.
It was a memory. Okay, look, I'll put it to you this way. I thought the same thing because I was like, all right, this man wasn't a Jedi. He can't be a Force ghost as well.
No,
but they just straight up say, this is a memory.
Yeah.
And I prefer that as opposed to him having his Sansa moment in his mind. I like the back and forth that they had.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just talking to Han and talking to Luke
didn't work for you.
I don't know. It was a little.
I guess in the sense of Star Wars, it makes sense. Within the world, I will tell you what didn't make sense.
Maybe, yeah, and maybe one of the reasons that I am less receptive than I think both of you is I think both of you are a little bit more
the language of
in Star Wars.
Yeah,
exactly. The fact that you even caught that there was a Force Awakens reference in there is beyond my.
Okay, you see, So that's why I say that's the those are the moments that you get. Gifted to you if you paid attention to the thing, especially more so for this man right here. He's talking about what planet they started on. That was the same one, that's way more.
I don't go that deep.
Yeah, that's way more of an investment. I just knew it because it was the same blocking from the Force Awakens. That stuff is cool. I don't get why Leia. Can you? I have a question, sir, Mister.
Yes.
Mr. Fernando. Why didn't Leia do the Force thing before for her son Ben? Why did she do it today, and why did it kill her?
Yeah. Well, why did it kill her? I think it's just because Maz hints at it. She's like, she needs to use all the power she has left to make save him. Yeah, to make the Force call and save him. I think it's mainly because in that moment she's breaking the connection he has with Palpatine, right? Because later on in the movie, when Palpatine talks to Richard Grant's character, General Pride, he's like, the Princess of Alderaan has disrupted my plan. So now he turns his attention to Rey. So in that moment, she has pretty much. So in the way it's happening, Kylo and Rey are fighting right on the Death Star. Leia taps into Kylo. Once Kylo has the upper hand on Rey, and she taps into him, and then he freezes. Realizes what his mother's doing for him, lets go of his lightsaber. Rey kills him, but in doing so, she pretty much kills Leia. I don't want to say Rey kills Leia, but
that's an answer I like.
No.
What? This is intriguing to me.
That sounds like a great YouTube video.
That sounds like a really good.
But Leia was gonna die either way. But once that happens, Rey senses it as well, right? Which in turn is why she heals Kylo.
Which is my next question. What is that? Since when? I know it's hinted.
Since when?
Yeah, I know it's hinted and stuff, but yeah.
A lot of the Force powers are kind of since when.
So which
is I'm not as much of a stickler for.
But even you know, Zach, that you're like, since when?
Okay. There's an interesting thing. So since when? I'm gonna have to minor spoilers. I hope. Do you guys?
We're in the spoiler section.
No, but not for this. For something else Star Wars related that you guys haven't seen yet.
They're here for it. It's good. Go for it.
maybe say the spoiler, the thing you're spoiling,
Okay.
so that if people care.
You know
Spoiler
what?
for
Episode
for
10.
For Mandalorian.
Okay, go for it.
Episode 7.
I know about this. Yeah.
I've seen it.
So initially Mandalorian was gonna come out every Friday, but for some reason they moved episode 7 till Wednesday, like before the opening night of
right.
Rise of Skywalker.
Bro, that ain't
I
a
was like, okay.
since when? Then that's a since Wednesday then. That's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but for you
explain.
guys, because you guys haven't seen.
I saw it. Yeah, and
Okay.
they have the scene with the Baby Yoda, except it's not Yoda, so don't call it
Yeah,
Yoda,
yeah.
but it's Baby Yoda. Uses his Force powers.
So Baby
to
Yoda.
heal.
That's what the
does
Disney
that.
shirt should say.
So Baby Yoda does that for the first time in Star Wars in Episode 7 of The Mandalorian. He heals someone who's been injured with his Force power, and then in Rise of Skywalker that happens 3 times. But when the first time it happens, when Rey heals a snake, I was just like, yo, that's like really smart. If people are really ingrained in Star Wars and they're watching Mandalorian, so they watch the episode on Wednesday night, they go into Thursday night, and then they're like, oh, that's a good connection. I think that's a really smart overall. But yeah, it's just they, and every of the trilogies, they like expand the Force powers. In the prequels they have. In the prequels, there's so many Force powers that George Lucas created that are never brought up again.
Yeah.
I remember a lot of people were arguing about like, okay, so now you can fly after, I think it was Force Awakens, or was it Last Jedi?
Yeah.
However, he flies in Empire, so I will never understand when people say that. When Darth Vader throws Luke right towards the end of the movie, when he throws him into that little shaft, and he goes over there to get him, Luke flies straight up. You go, like a jetpack, he just goes straight up. So I understand the concept of going back and forth between those two. I don't know if you had another one, but I wanted to ask you about Hux.
Oh.
Peter Rabbit looking.
I love what he did with Hux. I can understand people saying it kind of came out of nowhere, but now if you look at it, Kylo Ren treats Hux like trash.
Dude, they are Poe and Finn, but like domestic abuse. That's what that relationship is.
Kylo Ren does not like Hux at all. Hux was actually was like a part of the Empire, like really early on, and after the fall of the Empire, he was part of the building blocks of the First Order.
Yeah,
and
it seems a little bit like a guy who's put in a lot of effort versus like the young hotshot who comes along.
Because I love the line. He's like, I don't want you to win. I just want Kylo to lose.
Yeah, because if after I saw the first time, I went back and rewatched scenes from Last Jedi, and like after the throne room scene, there's a moment when the Hux is like tempted to kill Kylo. Like he has a blaster, and then he sees him, gets up, and he's like, oh no, never mind.
Donald Gleason has been, I think, giving one of the more underrated performances. Like, I think he's a character that a lot of people don't like, but he's doing a lot of fun things in it.
Yeah, no, I love that twist, because it makes sense to me. Like he was treated like trash by him.
So you like him dying?
I think so, just because it makes it made Richard E. Grant's character not like an idiot. I was like, well, who else would have?
It was crazy. Just like boom. Okay, there goes that character from the 3 movies. That's it. That's it. And we're
I felt it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, but it happens. I mean, I don't think when people went into episode 1, they would have been like, oh, Liam Neeson, oh, he's gonna stay around forever.
I felt like his death should have taken a little bit more time, but it was equal to what was JJ's friend, the pilot, the actor we always has with him. They got the exact same amount of screen.
Greg Grunberg,
yeah. When he passed too, I was like, I don't know. I felt like Hux is a little bit bigger than that. I've seen stormtroopers get a better send off than that.
Let's talk a little bit about Emperor Palpatine as well, because he ends up being the big bad for, I guess you could say, the whole saga.
Time.
And he was resurrected, I guess you want to say, for this film. He's got a decrepit zombie-esque look that before we started recording we were arguing a little bit about. Fernando, what did you like about Emperor Palpatine? I like
the overarching I don't want to say theme, but him just being the overarching villain of the entire Skywalker saga.
All 3 trilogies.
It makes sense to you
it makes sense to me, because now, as one unified story, when you rewatch Force Awakens and Last Jedi, you can now know that Palpatine is Snoke, right? So if you look at it, that Palpatine is Snoke. He's not like directly Snoke, but he says in the beginning that he made Snoke. And you see like the tanks with like,
is all of the villains.
He's all the voices in Kylo's head. So now there's like this whole new like layer that was uncovered for me, where I was like, okay, now let me go back and like analyze or interpret everything with this new information, right?
Yeah.
So that's why like little things make sense to me. Why obviously he loves the color red because that's the color of the Sith. So all the new Sith troopers are red. But that's why it also makes sense that Snoke's guards in Last Jedi are all red. Why his throne room is all red, Little things like that make sense to me now.
He's got an interior design.
Yeah. He's got a nice consistent aesthetic throughout the movies. But there's also like little like small tropes that are very consistent. Like in A New Hope, the only time you see the Emperor is in a hologram transmission to Vader. The only time you see Snoke in Force Awakens is a big hologram transmission to Kylo Ren. So now it all like makes sense to me. I do understand that the reveal of him just being back is kind of sudden and won't make sense to a lot of people that aren't like super ingrained. But I guess just to fill you guys in, that the Emperor always had a contingency plan if he were to fall. I also want to let you guys know, and like viewers in general, that this isn't the first time that a dark side user has died and like come back to life. Yeah, hasn't died and come back to life. Obviously, I don't know if you guys know. Well, you guys saw Solo, so Darth Maul isn't dead.
Yeah, because he comes back as a robot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't been dead for a long time. He's in the Clone Wars
that whole
show.
like, is the character dead? Stays dead? I don't know. I feel like if you watch any villain heroes and villain show, it just kind of happens and they find some way to explain it. So I'm not terribly hung up on the idea of like, why isn't he still dead? Did you like the Emperor Palpatine villain arc, or you're not as high
Again,
on it?
I'm more of a fan of the she comes from no one type of thing. I think that's way more ballsy as opposed to her being the granddaughter. But I'm not gonna lie, when it was like, oh, you're the granddaughter of the Sith, and if it was retconning, there needs to be an award for good fan fiction retconning, because the way they found a way to just slip, like it makes sense. It's like, she comes from no one. How do we make this rework in our favor? Well, the parents were it's like, it works. It works well. Yeah. Whether you don't like it or not, whether you think it's too much, whether you think, like they said, they got it all from Reddit. It makes sense. Plus, if we're going to compare it to something else of a closing saga of a finale, Game of Thrones. In the way that it ends, it would have been really ballsy to have seen Rey go full. I still think it's very goofy when she comes out with the Motorola Razor looking lightsaber that she spins like that. I think it just looks as goofy as can be. But what if they would have gone all Daenerys with her? I started wondering, did they watch the ending of 8 and they went, oh wait, what the heck? We gotta get rid of that, Rey. But the idea of him coming back has always been there. I know this from all of my friends who are Star Wars fans in The Force Awakens saying Snoke is clearly his puppet. And I was like, I thought that dude died. And they're like, no, he's been here. So it's been there from the start. So while some people may say, again, it's going with 8, that it may just be theories that the creators decided to just go for the fan theories, as George R.R. Martin said, just because you have an ending, you cannot change everything you're doing just because they've guessed it. Because then all of the little secrets and clues that you've put in there, if you try to subvert expectations, you're just going to ruin the entire through line that you had there. Yeah. Granted, some may say that the trilogy didn't really have a through line because it goes boop, 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 like that. But, I mean, it answers a lot of questions from Rey's powers. Like you said, a lot of the aesthetics. A lot of people had guessed it from the beginning because they had read the novels and stuff and knew that he was still around and knew that it very much sounded like a plan that the Emperor would. And again, while I prefer her coming from nothing, and I think that story is a lot better and she could still embrace the Skywalker name there, the argument that her being an actual Skywalker, being a no one, but that this one of being related to someone actually evil is a bigger journey to overcome. I can't argue it. It does make sense. Mm-hmm. I just prefer
Yeah.
What they first gave us and is in books. Bro, someone showed me the book today and said, "This is Rey. Her parents are no one."
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
It's you. So you know what I'm talking about,
yeah,
and
I know
that's an
exactly about.
officially licensed Star Wars thing. That's not what the new ones are gonna say. It makes sense. I am just very confused. And my last question for you, Fernando,
Yes.
is were these two Azor Ahai? I didn't understand that whole concept at the end of how
dyad?
he was like, if you beat me, then I automatically, that's you touch me and try to kill me, I win. But then she does, and then she wins as well. And they made this whole kind of idea that these two were the two sides of the same coin that have been prophesized for so long.
Like it was almost like a hereditary thing. It's like you are the vessel.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so talking about the climactic battle between Palpatine, Rey, and
Grandma
Ben.
and granddaughter.
Yeah,
Grandpa and granddaughter.
There's just so much in there that I love, going back to when Rey's trying to face him alone, and then Ben shows up. Do you guys think? How do you guys feel about his turn? Do you think it was earned? I've seen some people say that they didn't feel like it was earned.
I do think it was earned. I just wish they spent more time with it. And I've been saying this throughout. I really do think it's two movies stuck into one.
Okay.
Which is why I keep comparing it to 8. Because I don't think any of us here were against the Daenerys turn. We just all thought it was 3 seasons rushed
Poorly
into
handled.
one.
Okay.
I've loved his character. I say this. We put up with whiny Anakin. I can put up with a distraught Adam Driver, as he is, and that's every Adam Driver role.
Yeah.
So to see him, what he goes through in The Force Awakens, what he goes through in The Last Jedi, what he goes through here, I do think it should have been 2 movies, but they wanted to do a trilogy. I think it should have been 4. It's just it happens really quickly, but I really liked it.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of it. Just
No.
hate the Reylo kiss. You cannot. It has been. I've sat with it enough. There's no way. There's no way.
I'll get to my opinions on that, but no, I love this turn. I think it's totally warranted, and I like just the way that once he turns to when he jumps and he's that little ow when he hits the statue. I thought was so good. And then when he's facing off with the Knights of Ren, which I don't know if you guys want to ask me about them later, because I know that's another big talking point.
What happened? What about them?
But the build up to what Rian Johnson starts in The Last Jedi with them having this connection in the Force to you get the seeds of when they're talking on Octo, and then The Last Jedi he gets the rain on his glove when he's all the way on the other side, to in this movie when he literally rips the necklace off of Rey and has it, and then later knows where she is because the Darth Vader helmet, to that
the way that they use that as foreshadowing for the exchanging of the lightsaber was.
I think
cool.
it's so
and you
incredible.
like how that took its time. See how much more rewarding it is when you take your time.
And then when they face off, okay, so another parallel I see in this was when Palpatine is telling Rey, your destiny is to kill me, and then all the Sith live in me, and when you strike me down in anger, it'll pass into you, and you will be Empress Palpatine. That's also really mirroring what Snoke is doing in The Last Jedi, because when you watch the scene, he's pretty much telling Rey what to do. He's you step forward, you draw your lightsaber, and you strike me down in anger. It's when Snoke is commanding Kylo when he's gonna supposedly kill Rey before Kylo kills Snoke. He's you draw your lightsaber and kill your one true enemy, but Rey says no, and she doesn't. And
wait, I gotta stop you.
Yeah,
I have to stop you.
What?
So then what was his plan if Kylo would have killed Rey? Or was his plan to not have Kylo kill Rey then?
No,
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So to me, Palpatine's initial plan is to turn Kylo because he knows Kylo is...
Oh yeah, contingencies. I forgot. The Emperor's got contingencies.
Yeah. Leia breaking the connection between Ben and Palpatine is what changes his plan to focus on Rey, right?
Okay.
Palpatine's initial plan from the very beginning was to get Rey, but obviously that didn't work. Her parents hid her from him for years.
She's been missing for 2 decades, yeah.
Yeah, so when he finds out about Ben, he's all right, this is an easy
My new way in.
Yeah, he's like, this is my new way in. I could start manipulating him a little bit. And then obviously when the whole Luke situation happens, that turns him, right? But Ben's always had that conflict inside, the dark and light side conflict with him. So yeah, I think if him killing Rey, like that would have been the ultimate sacrifice of like him finally turning to the dark side, which would have been killing Rey.
You convinced me, Fernando. It's a great trilogy.
You're welcome.
And I love it. It is. It's very intriguing to hear all the little stuff that comes together.
Yeah.
Even when it seems, like there's with such a big franchise, there will always be things that still connect. Even with the things that we disagree with, there's still a lot. I mean, it's a massive franchise with all the effort to put into it. Keep going. I don't know what your final thoughts are. With
so the whole concept of the dyad is new, and there isn't really like that many answers for it yet. Palpatine says that it's something that hasn't been seen for thousands of years. The dyad that they have in the Force, because they do come from two very strong bloodlines of Force users, and I just think. So I'm gonna get like really like start into Star Wars here, but so the Sith have always had this concept called the rule of two, right? When you think back to the prequels, it was Maul and Palpatine, right? They were the two in power, the Master and the Apprentice, and then Dooku and Palpatine once Maul died, and then in the original trilogy it was Palpatine and Vader, the rule of two, right? And there's always a cycle where I know you're gonna enjoy this one because I saw on your live stream the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise, right? They had the rule of two. Plagueis was the master and Palpatine was his apprentice, and the way it always goes is the apprentice ends up killing the master, and then it reverts. That never happened for Palpatine. All his apprentices ended up getting killed or turning. So in this one, the way I see it is in that moment when Palpatine realizes that, all right, both of these people that I want to continue with me aren't gonna budge. He says, and he like takes their Force energy from them, which I thought was really cool. He says, the power of two restores the one true Emperor. I think that's him basically saying, well, now I just have to do this alone. There's no one else that I could convey but myself, and I just think the whole ending is so like poetic to me. Because Star Wars is like poetry. George Lucas has been on record in saying that everything in the story does mirror a lot. And I don't know how much you guys were like affected by the scene of Rey like listening to all the Jedi.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, that's my second favorite scene to the Ben and Han I know thing. Because they could have easily shown all the Force ghosts, right? Yes. And that may have not worked. But the voices and recognizing some of the voices, and I know all of them. Yeah. When I went to the end and I saw Freddie Prinze Jr., I know that he voices some of the stuff from the animated series. That is really cool to put in there because for years, the Marvel TV people were told they were going to make it to the movies. And they never got that.
Yeah, and so, one huge thing that a lot of Star Wars fans like hardcore Star Wars fans that are into like the books and TV shows always wanted were like, oh, why don't like things get included more? And I actually
those
think
are really important characters.
I actually think a lot of things are there. They just aren't like very clear. Like the little seeds are there, and obviously this one does put things straight in there, like the voices.
That though, that's appreciated.
I think it's really cool, and again, it's the thing where it's like regular casual fans might recognize one or two here, like Yoda, Obi-Wan, and stuff. But there's a couple that
Sam Jackson.
Yeah, Sam Jackson.
When I heard Sam Jackson, I was like,
oh yeah, he was
very noticeable.
Speaking of Sam Jackson, when you look at it, the way Rey ends up like killing Palpatine, the thing is, I don't want to say she kills him. Like, she doesn't kill him out of like aggression. She kills him in defense, which is another one of the lessons that Luke ends up teaching her from The Last Jedi. But the maneuver that she uses is the same one that Mace Windu, Sam Jackson uses in the Empire in Revenge of the Sith, blocking the Force lightning. But yeah, there's so many other voices. Obviously, like you mentioned, Freddie Prinze Jr., who plays Kanan, who's in Star Wars Rebels. There's Ashley Eckstein, who plays Ahsoka Tano, who is in the Clone Wars.
Yeah, that's people love that character.
People love her. But then there's also like so many like ancillary Jedi, like Ayla Secura, who like has one scene in Revenge of the Sith when she's getting killed by stormtroopers.
That's so cool though, you know.
Yeah, there's so many.
Yeah,
Obviously, Hayden Christensen.
I would love to see him.
Which, strangely enough, the line that he says is actually a line that that's referring to obviously like the whole Chosen One arc when he's like bring balance as I did when he initially kills Emperor Palpatine. But also there's like this whole other arc in the Clone Wars series called the Mortis arc that like looks into the Force like very heavily, where George Lucas presents these three like god figures called the Father, the Son, and the Daughter that are like the three.
I've heard of this.
Yeah, they're like the three like binding forces of the Force. The Daughter being the light, the Son being the dark, and then the Father keeping the balance. And then that Anakin, spoiler alert for this, kills the Son after the Daughter sacrifices herself, and then he kills the Son after the Father sacrifices himself. It's very confusing. There's a lot of things I could point out.
Yeah, I'm aware. I heard it goes all the way into molecular stuff.
Yeah.
And that was something that George Lucas wanted to get into.
Yeah.
And that at a certain point, all of our bodies were just vessels for like, you know, like Christianity, there's certain sects that say like it's angels and demons all around us. Yeah. And we're just the bodies with these spiritual warfare. Yeah. But that the Force is like that. And I was like, all right, now we're getting into like mother territory.
Yeah. So there's just a lot. I love that scene so much because also as it was happening, I was like, yo, it would have been cool if like all the Force Ghosts showed up. But now I think the way they did it is so perfect.
I think they did it with the voices also, using audio instead was the best stuff. So do you think he's dead?
Who?
The Emperor.
Oh, I would say this time. I do think.
Yeah, this time.
This time, yeah.
It's over.
Let's wait another 30 years to answer that definitively.
So what do you think's going to happen next then? Where do you carry it from here? Calling it the end of the saga, does that mean there's no more numbers? There's no more chapters? Is it now all going to be Star Wars stories? I would love to see more Mandalorian type serials instead.
And here's the thing. I have like a lot. So over the last couple of days, I've like bookmarked several tweets I like respect but disagree with in the end.
Okay.
One of them is about an article that explains why said author is like isn't looking forward to the future of Star Wars because the way they perceive this new sequel trilogy is a lot of nostalgia and just like retreading old things. But the way I look at it is the opposite, where this sequel trilogy sets up completely for the new generation. By the end of this movie, all three of the original heroes have passed, but
in each installment,
but in each one give very critical teach very critical lessons to our new heroes, and by the end of it, you know, we have the new family, Rafe and Poe, that are going to continue. I don't know if we'll see like new stories with them.
Are they? Yeah, because I heard that they're done.
I feel like it's inevitable.
It's inevitable, of course.
I feel like they will obviously take a break. I believe Daisy Ridley's talked about wanting to take a break, but when you have a property like this and there's this urge to kind of return to known characters, you know, they had a chance to reboot it fresh with Episode 7, and they brought back all the familiar faces. So whenever we get Episode 10, whether or not that's a Skywalker saga movie or not, I feel like we'll see some familiar
That'd be
faces.
Interesting. Would 10 to 19 be a whole new trilogy again?
Yeah.
Like separate?
That's the interesting question. I mean, obviously, in development, they have Rian Johnson's trilogy of movies that is supposedly still in the works. They had the now...
Wait. Why? So they can make a trilogy then saying that his trilogy doesn't matter?
No, I think for me it'd be interesting to see Ryan like continue like what happens after. I think that'd be interesting, since a lot of people do think that his vision or his like the way he perceives Star Wars is like more fresh, I guess. Than what they did. So seeing what he continues, because I know a lot of people want to go backwards. You know, years before. The Skywalkers or Palpatine, like the Old Republic type stuff, which is also something I'd be really interested in.
That should be a series, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, now with
Disney
Disney
Plus.
Plus, and as we've mentioned, The Mandalorian,
success of
Star
The
Wars
Mandalorian.
has the potential to expand in several different directions. Although I think we all believe that they're not going to just give up on movies.
Not at all.
Just because we've reached episode 9.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At the risk of taking this way too long,
Being
I
longer than
want to say
the
one more
trilogy.
thing that you're getting into all these details,
Which is interesting.
and all these little
Yeah,
Easter eggs and
super
stuff.
detailed.
My knowledge of Star Wars Easter eggs goes as far as they finally gave Chewie the medal, and I fucking hated that moment.
So I guess to again counter this, a lot of people are saying or a lot of people
He finally got it,
Oh,
but he
Chewie
did.
finally got his medal or whatever. In a comic that came out a couple years ago, they actually did give Chewie his medal already. So then a lot of hardcore fans were like, so why did they give it to him again? But when I rewatched the movie,
to serve a cheap moment for the movie going on. Sorry.
no.
Whoa!
Actually, the way that I see it is, it's kind of hard to notice, but when Leia is going to lay down to connect with Ben, she's holding the medal, which I perceive as Han's medal. And then at the end of the movie, when Maz gives a medal to Chewie, I think it's Han's medal.
Hans.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's the way I see it now. Because technically in canon, Chewie already got a medal for that. So I don't know, but some things are left vague, and I guess it's just up to interpretation or how you perceive it.
The Star Wars fans have spoken. There he is. Thank you, Fernando, for your insights.
You're welcome.
Anything else, I guess, on what we want to see in the future?
I do want to
Star
see new
Wars in
stories.
general.
I mean, I think that's.
I agree.
I'm loving Mandalorian.
Let the past die.
Even though let the
Kill
past
it if you have to.
Even though I know the Obi-Wan series is coming out, which isn't new stories.
It just makes me think they really are not leaving it. It's like, we're gonna do new stuff other than the Obi-Wan and Baby Yoda, all these different things and stuff that you're familiar to. So we'll see though.
Yeah, the more that they kind of are willing to go into what feels like fresher territory, I think the more exciting it'll be for me personally, and maybe for a lot of other fans. There's this. I understand the urge to try and integrate it into the things that we know and love, but at the same time, I don't know if you ever can do something that quite lives up to the things that we already hold dear.
Exactly.
And maybe the idea is to find what's exciting and new about these types of worlds.
So then we can hold it dear, fresh, anew. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fernando, do you have any
Yes.
last thoughts on
one
Rise
last
of
thing
Skywalker?
I wanna put out there.
Quick 30-minute segment. Go.
Okay, and see how you guys feel. This isn't something I found or realized, but Brian Young, who's a big Star Wars guy, he has his own podcast. I saw this tweet of his. I didn't fully understand it. Then I listened to the podcast where he explains it, and it literally broke me. He says one line that is now super sad to think about is the line that Anakin says to Padme, where he says, love can't save you now, only my new powers can. Because the ultimate arc of Anakin in the prequels is he wants this new power in order to save the people he loves. Which ties into what Rose says in The Last Jedi when she saves Finn and says we don't win by giving ourselves up and out of hate or anger, but saving the ones we love. And then ultimately what happens to Kylo and how Kylo ends up saving Rey, bringing her back from the dead, which is all Anakin wanted to do with Padme, was prevent her death, or if she did die, bring her back from the dead. To which me blew my mind that Anakin literally could have had that power, but he just gave in to the dark side, and that wasn't the route that he had to take in order to obtain the power that he wanted. So that really I was like, damn, that to me that's another example where it brings a full circle.
Full circle.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So the Rise of Skywalker for some really brings the saga to a complete and fulfilling end. For others, maybe not so much. We want to hear from you in the comments down below. What did you think of the Rise of Skywalker? Please send all detailed questions to Fernando because I will not be able to answer them. That's all for this edition of Let Us Explain on Intercut. You can catch more from me, Zach Shevich, by following me on Twitter, Instagram, or Letterboxd at ZShevich. Fernando, where can people find more from you?
I don't know if I want to give my Twitter on case. Nah, you guys can follow me on Twitter at border_logic. And yeah, send any questions my way, or have a friendly conversation. Don't be mean though.
Go at them.
Art, where can people find more from you?
You can find me at the A to Z Show and Let Me Explain on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Or you can find me every week here on the Intercut Podcast.
Yes, you can listen to every episode of the Intercut Podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, or your favorite podcatcher. I like Overcast, and then make sure you're subscribed not just to the audio feed, but the video feed as well on youtube.com/intercutpod, where you can catch our bright, smiling faces as we break down the latest in entertainment for you. Catch new episodes of the Intercut Podcast on Fridays, as well as these sporadic Let Us Explains. Please leave us a comment, like the video, and consider heading over to iTunes to give us a 5-star review. Like our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages. All of them are at Intercut Pod to get updates throughout the week from Art, from Fernando, from me, from all of the guests that we feature here on Intercut. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, the little triangle thing is how you find Emperor Palpatine.